to embrace that freedom. Obviously, the Cypriot hospitality is something that it was a draw card for me for many years as a South African Cypriot. But I think that was the turning point for me, growing up in South Africa and realizing, yes, our parents have given us the best, they've painted the perfect picture, but there is a system that we need to fight. And do we fight it or do we accept it? So I said, well, look, whatever you tell me, I will never mention your name, but I will mention your story. So think about it. And not only if you've got a story to share that will also act as a voice for a lot of other women that have experienced stories similar to yours, please let's get the word out. So I was putting on my journalist
Someone's story
hat.
is someone else's survival guide.
Exactly. So she phoned me about a week later, completely different tone of voice. I didn't even recognize her, to be honest. And she said to me, I'd like to meet with you again, but please don't come to my house. I'd like you to come to another house in Nicosia.
I'm Farah Shammas. Welcome to Hotel Talk. We hope you enjoy listening to this friendly conversation between people connected by real life in hotels. Welcome back to Hotel Talk, and today I have the most exciting episode planned ever. For, I won't say the first time, but definitely the tables are going to turn in this particular episode because the gentleman with me today usually is the one doing the interviewing. So it's going to be a lot of fun now to be the person being interviewed. We go back a long way. His name is Paul Lambis. A lot of you will know him as the host of Culture Scope, which is very, very popular. And he's also a senior editor for the Cyprus Mail, as well as being an author and so much more. My goodness, documentaries. The list goes on. So Paul is going to have to tell us all about that himself.
Well, Farah, thank you so much, first and foremost, for having me on your show. It's a brilliant, brilliant podcast.
Thank you so much.
And I think it's just it's exactly what we need, and what a wonderful concept. And thanks again for inviting me on your show. Of course, we do go back, way back. And I feel at home here whenever I walk through your doors at the St. Raphael. I don't know whether it's because I've interviewed about 90% of my guests.
So many. I love it.
At the Tower or at the St. Raphael. But the vibe here is just so nice, and it just feels like home every time I walk through the store. So thank you again,
It's a pleasure. I was laughing with you recently. I mean, the first time that we met, or let's say heard of each other, and it just goes to show the power of social media, was way back when LinkedIn was quite a static, boring platform. And I'm sure it was LinkedIn that I saw that, and how we were connected, or it popped up, I have no idea, that you were a Cypriot living in Cyprus, having been brought up somewhere else, and you'd written a book called Where is Home? And my goodness, does that apply to so many people, myself included, who were mixed cultures. We grew up in different places. And I was like, wow, I've got to get this book, and I really want to support people who do these endeavors. So I messaged you.
That's right.
And I remember you saying, yeah, I'll drop off the copy of the book. And it was like really early days. And I've still got that book with a lovely message. We're going way back
to 2011.
Yeah.
That's
and then after that, imagine we became friends. So, and everyone, this is part of the reason that I started this podcast, is really to highlight what hotels do for so many people, how they bring people together, how there are points in the community where so many people meet. And Paul is an example of that, because you interview people here, you come here, you filmed videos here, you've done so much. So.
Well, the hotel itself, Farah, it's a wonderful venue. I mean, a lot of people seem to think that it's just, holiday.
Yeah, beds.
That's it.
Yeah,
but
it
goes beyond that. And the thing is, it's the perfect place. Aside from the fact that we've got this coffee culture industry going on at the moment, it's still the most focused place to come and meet someone, to discuss business, to discuss social, and also to pick up on what's going on in Cyprus. Because at the end of the day, we do know that tourism is the main industry on the island. But at the end of the day, you'll only get to see it at face value when you are at a hotel. And for me personally, as I mentioned before, the St. Raphael it feels like home, but it's also a symbol of what Cyprus's tourism industry is all about. And it's very nice that you've maintained a legacy and you keep going on with that and you keep adding to it, but staying so grounded at the same time on where it started, but taking it into the new era. And it's just such a breath of fresh air to walk through those doors, like I said to you in the beginning. But 2011 was a very important year for me when that book was published. Now, obviously, my writing skills weren't as they are now, because you evolve as a person as you go along.
Well, we would hope not, because that would mean you're not growing.
Stay stagnant, yeah.
Exactly.
But it was basically my 9th year that I was in Cyprus. We came to Cyprus in 2002, hoping to avoid the crime. Well, we did avoid it, thank God. But the crime was escalating to such a level where we couldn't live a proper life. And when you're trying to educate your children, because I think that's the most important thing, we had our child, and the knowledge that you impart to your children at that age is critical. So you're either going to tell them to be free spirits and creative and embrace every opportunity that's presented to them, or you're going to tell them to lock your doors and hide behind a huge cage, because at the end of the day, we all lived like lions in cages in South Africa. You built up this huge entertainment system at home so that you don't venture beyond the borders. But it was a wonderful step for us to come to Cyprus to embrace that freedom. Obviously, the Cypriot hospitality is something that it was a draw card for me for many years as a South African Cypriot. But I was still trying to find myself in Cyprus, and it took a good 8 years before that near-fatal accident that I had, which was in Bafos. It was a Friday. I was going to pick up my son from school. To cut a long story short, it ended up being a 6-month journey in hospital and another 6 months at home trying to walk. And then I think at the end of the day, we all get caught up in this rat race, and you need to take one step back and just reevaluate, reassess. And I think for me, the turning point was lying in bed and thinking, what's the next step? And a friend of mine actually suggested that I write down my experiences because it could help somebody else. But then I thought, just writing the whole experience and the whole journey to recovery, it needs to go back to the beginning. And then you realize, where is home? Now I'm in Cyprus, but it could have been South Africa. For somebody, it could be the UK, which is my other go-to place. And I'm trying to find myself, where is home, but internally as a person, but also physically where I am. And I've realized one thing this whole journey has taught me is that as long as you surround yourself with people that are positive, that people encourage, that people that motivate, and people that also introduce new ideas so that you can constantly expand your mindset and not stay limited and confined within a specific space, that's home. And that's something I take with me. And COVID was another example that also taught us, well, it was encouraging us to isolate, stay at home. But from COVID, that's what gave birth to Culture Scope, because we could still connect. The power of social media, as you mentioned. And it was a wonderful opportunity to see what other people are doing in this world and how they are contributing. And it doesn't make a difference whether you're a celebrity or you're just the average Joe on the street. Everybody has a role to play. And in this huge, beautiful universe that we live in, everybody's connected. And that day that you reached out to me and said, I'd like your book, who would have thought that would have mushroomed into the relationship that we have now? You're one of my closest friends, a person that I look up to, an inspiration. I mean, it's also, let's put it, it's not easy being in a male-dominated industry and trying to have a voice. And yet Farah is doing that. And not only that, you branching out into whether it's your club and whether it's the vegan recipes that you're sharing and this whole outlook that you have, and you're imparting that on your children. I think that is paving the way for a generation that is more controlled, more, focused, which is very important. And at the moment, I'm seeing a lot of examples, especially with the people that I interview, where some of their children are heading. And I keep drawing on you as an inspiration, as an example, because I think you're doing a wonderful job. So,
thank you so much, Paul. That's really Very, very kind of you. So I want to go back to the beginning, like really the beginning.
Okay.
I know we've touched on it, but you grew up in South Africa, but let's talk about where you were born, the influence your parents had on you, the surroundings. And you've had a lot of time to reflect. You've written 2 books now, but what made you you? So let's just walk through the whole stage of becoming Paul.
Paul came into, he made a grand entrance on the 21st of March in 1974.
So you're Aries.
I'm an Aries.
Like
I'm on the cusp though. Oh,
yeah.
you're
yes,
Aries.
30th of March. We're March Aries.
There you go. That answers everything.
That's it. We can close the podcast. We're done, everyone.
I think, I loved my childhood. Growing up in South Africa, especially when you're in a country that is away from mainland Cyprus or mainland Greece, the diaspora tend to stick together. So we grew up in a very, very Greek Cypriot household. The food was great, hence the result. The belief system that was, basically instilled. But I think
Did you go to a Greek school?
No.
Was there a Greek school?
I did go to Greek school. I did go to
like
Greek
my
school.
big fat Greek wedding.
But my parents insisted, and my mother, which I credit her here, is she wanted her child to have a good English upbringing. My mother's also Greek Cypriot. So I went to King Edward VII School, which is an all-boys school in South Africa, in Johannesburg, that is very much, it's one of the Milner schools. These are the old traditional English schools, kind of like what you see in
colonial.
Dead Poets Society, very colonial. And I think that, because my entire experience at that school set the foundation of who I am today. And in those days, of course, we didn't have to worry about, external factors. It was just stay
social
focused.
Media,
We didn't have that. We had brotherhood. We had to stick together. Whether we didn't like somebody, we never said it. Whether we knew someone did something, we never told on him. So that brotherhood was part of my life for 12 years. And then, obviously, Greek being a very important factor in my life, we were forced to go to Greek school every other day. And of course, catechism classes and Greek dancing lessons. So we had to represent the best of both worlds. And I think if you had to sum it up, that's what my childhood was like. Representing a country that was my birthplace and growing up with South African friends, and then growing up and maintaining a Greek culture when you're one of many cultures in a multicultural society. But the one little hidden secret was that we were brought up in an environment oblivious to apartheid. So we were basically brought up in a world that was, we were said this is utopia, but we didn't know that behind the scenes there was a system called apartheid that basically said racial segregation, and even to some extent gender segregation. So as you grow older and you become more aware, which I think I got that awareness, my eyes opened up during uni days, when suddenly we were in an environment that everybody had to interact. Men, women, whatever belief, whatever color of skin, we all had to become one, and we were all looked upon as individuals studying a specific course. And I think that the turning point for me was we went to a restaurant with a group of students, fellow students that were at the school, at the university at the time. And I recall the owner coming to tell me that we had to leave the establishment because one of the people in our group was an black African male. And I didn't understand why we needed to make that choice. And obviously we all opted to go and get takeout, and then we'll go to a park and sit together, because he insisted, our friend, doesn't matter, guys. He says, you guys stay and I will go. And we just didn't see that that was right.
I just can't imagine living in that world.
It was a very, it was a world that was presented to the public. That was
at your school. Did you have black Africans?
No, we didn't.
So you were just white. So.
And I recall in 1990, a year before I graduated, we had one black student attending, and he happened to be the ambassador's son, some French ambassador or one of those countries in Europe, and he didn't really fit in. And I didn't like that because as a Greek Cypriot, similarly, my Lebanese friends, my Portuguese friends, Italian friends, we all stuck together because we were referred to as the Continentals, almost like the outsiders. And the Continentals knew what it was like to stand out from the crowd. And he became part of our group. And to this day, I still maintain close ties with this young chap. Who is now a aeronautical engineer in Switzerland, by the way. So it just shows you that irrespective of your color, your belief system, you're capable of achieving great things. But I think that was the turning point for me, growing up in South Africa and realizing, yes, our parents have given us the best. They've painted the perfect picture, but there is a system that we need to fight. And do we fight it or do we accept it? And that was one of the biggest decisions I had to face. And when Nelson Mandela was released, I remember another turning point was we were sitting at the Greek Sporting Club, like all Greeks do every Sunday. We used to go to the Greek Sporting Club. And they were showing in those days the release of Nelson Mandela on a big screen. And half of the crowd was saying, we need to immigrate because things are going to change in South Africa. And the other half was saying, no, we'll stay here and we'll just adopt the change and go with the flow. So we opted for the latter. We thought it was going to be great. Unfortunately, when you're living in a society that's had apartheid for so many years, it's not going to change overnight. We know what it's like also living on an island that's divided between Turkish Cypriots and Greek Cypriots. And you can't just, with a click of
there's a lot of feelings, a lot of emotions, a lot of bitterness, resentment that's built up.
But I do remember something very funny about this whole thing is because when obviously the new government had come into play and obviously they were trying to, obviously Nelson Mandela was a great person and I had the opportunity of meeting him the one time.
Oh, nice.
And I just couldn't believe that there was no animosity, no anger. It was just a wonderful, wonderful individual who actually stood for what we were going for. And then there was such a beautiful feeling when we won the World Cup Rugby in 1995. And everybody was united through sport. So, which is again another important factor, how culture and how meeting people and socializing with people unites you more than certain other restrictions that have been placed by certain individuals because they don't want to embrace that change. But the funny moment was, I remember on the Friday night leaving work and I went home and that Monday I missed the turnoff on the highway to get to work because it had changed names. Because obviously it was named after an apartheid activist and then suddenly it was changed it was given another name for somebody that fought against apartheid. So obviously I missed the turnoff because we were so blinded by that. And I laugh about that. But unfortunately, Mandela's vision of South Africa changed slightly when other people took over. And, there's obviously, you can't basically unite the whole of Africa when you're trying to sort out the problems at home. Mandela's vision was to create a union, like a European Union, but an African Union of nations. But I think the most important thing was to deal with what was happening at home first, and then opening up your borders to every other African nation. And then we had this influx of other Africans that were looking for work. Everybody wants to work. And it just messed the whole system up. And then crime escalated, and that's why we left South Africa. So I think the things that define me are many. It's my Greek my Greek ancestry, my English upbringing, my experiences with the political system in South Africa, and of course the crime, which all came together and led me to Cyprus.
Led you back home.
Yeah, you know, and it was just so wonderful to stand there at Petra de Romeu and just feel that this whole journey that we've done is only chapter 1. Now it's the second phase of the journey. And I could say after the accident, it's now the 3rd phase. And then after COVID, 4th phase. So you go through many, many chapters in life. And everybody has the potential to write their story. And I would love to read it because everybody, you take one thing from everybody, one positive thing. And that's the one thing I like asking people is what motivates you to get up in the morning? What's your motto? What's your belief system? For you, it means, living a certain way of life. the other person, it means leaving a legacy behind and working towards that legacy. But if you take all that positive, those positive facts, if you gather them and put them together, you're the wealthiest person on this planet. That's what we should be looking for, is how to bring out the best in people and not what's for my own benefit.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I want to talk a bit about your mum, because I had the pleasure of meeting your mother, and you came to a brunch recently, and you it's very apparent that you really care about women's rights, especially with what you've just said now, with everyone's rights and their beliefs and their choice in life. But I think you were inspired to care so much for women because of your mummy.
Absolutely.
And so can you tell us a bit about that and the influence she played?
I think both my mother and my grandmother have played a pivotal role in my upbringing. It's, first of all, growing up in a male-dominated society, and especially in a culture where women are expected to be subservient. I didn't like that. I must be honest, even though I was also brought up in a very British school that was said that, that men have this right and men have to do that and men have to stand for this. At the end of the day, I didn't like what it was doing to my mom, because she also had just as much right to take off her slippers, lie on the couch and watch TV. But while we were watching TV and entertaining ourselves, she was in the kitchen washing up, slaving away. And when we went to help, it was expected that children do not help in the kitchen, which I disagree with that. I think my mother played a very big part in my life, because she encouraged me to look at women from her perspective. And because she didn't have a voice, she encouraged me to help women find that voice. And that's why when I met my wife, who is louder than me and has her own opinion, maybe I should backtrack on that.
In the loveliest way, Nikki.
I think she's absolutely amazing, because the thing is, it's very important that people realize that women work completely differently to men. Women are, yes, they have empathy. They deal with things realistically, whereas men deal with them more based on their egos. And I know a lot of my kumbari are going to be sitting here listening and thinking, oh gosh, I think we need to alienate this man. But,
what's wrong with him?
I like looking at women who, because I feel women are the most challenged of the lot. Irrespective, I know there's a lot of other communities out there, and I don't want to bash anybody, because I know they're all fighting for their rights. But I think women are the ones that are they're not looked upon correctly. And especially when you're talking about 2023, and if you even want to, I don't want to go into politics, but you look at our political system where you have 2 or 3 women in power that actually have a say, and that's ridiculous. That's why I look at also through my theatrical productions, because...
And even then they get bullied or they get criticized, or what they say isn't taken into account as much as what they wore, or whether they had a matching handbag or whatever. There was
actually a comment that was made by one of the female politicians through one of the blogs that I was reading, and they said, she should just keep quiet and be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. And I actually... Somebody
said that?
Yes, and I reported that quote, because, that statement, because I felt that, you're ignorant. Okay, I don't want to say the expletives, but at the end of the day, it's just that ignorance. And I see it a lot in Cyprus, I have to be honest, and not only with women. It's again, it brings me back to the point of how you train your children. My son, at one stage, we went to one of the main athletic stores here in Cyprus to purchase some clothing for myself, and he was standing next to me, and when we were in the queue, another cashier decided to open up, and she basically, nodded towards me and said, come over here, I'll serve you. And the woman, the guy behind me and his daughter made a comment about my weight. And they said, look at the fat person, how fast he's running so that he can make the payment and get out of here. And I pretended that I didn't hear the comment, because you do get bullied also for being an overweight individual in Cyprus. And then I thought, you know what, if I don't say anything, my son that's standing right next to me is going to think that it's okay.
Okay.
And also, where does he get off by mocking somebody that he doesn't even know what chapter in my life you're walking in on? I mean, you don't know that I've gone through an accident, that I'm immobile, I'm gone through steroids and treatments, and a lot of people have their own struggles. If you focus on your own struggle, the world will be a better place. And reach out to people on how they can help you become a better person, or how they can help you, recover or be part of that process.
Just be positive.
So
throw love out there and
they
kindness.
mocked, they laughed, they looked at me, and then on the way out, I turned around and I said to him, first of all, I do speak Greek. I understand Greek. First of all, it's my first language here now, where it was my second language in South Africa. And I said to him, what you're doing now is you should apologize to your daughter and tell her that this is not the way you should judge people. And he apologized then in front of his daughter, but I'm sure they must have laughed it off afterwards. But that's exactly what we're seeing, is that parents, it needs to start there. It needs
to start from the parents.
And they need to educate their kids and tell them. And when I see this, and if my mother hadn't started going back to my mom, encouraging us and telling us that women should have a voice, and look at examples like Evita Peron, look at people that are fighting through the system. The people that don't like those women that have fought through the system, they accuse them of many other things. That she slept her way to the top.
Exactly,
she did this.
Everything.
Why? Is she not capable of achieving great things on her own merit? Does she need to go to A, B, and C, D because they are the ones that are going to get it? Yes, we know about the mysteries of Hollywood and how some people made it to the top, but nowadays, I don't know. I mean...
But these comments are thrown around. I mean, I've felt it. I've had it all my life,
Can you imagine?
I think even from uni, because I got... I remember once I was top, it was tourism and it was mainly men on the course, and I got second top grade in my accounting course. And then everyone was laughing. They went, oh, she must have slept with the professor.
There you go.
But, okay, they were laughing because he was about 100 years old. But I was like, well, you wouldn't have said that if any of you guys got that grade.
No, they wouldn't. No. And, I mean, I've got a friend of mine in South Africa who owns now an ice cream empire. Now, I won't mention names, but I'm sure a lot of our South African friends will know who I'm talking about. But she basically inherited the business from her father. And the business now is thriving even more. And the ones that look at her with a jealous, evil eye, they turn around and say, well, she's only doing well because her father gave her the business. But don't they realize that she could have been given the business, but in a year's time, she would have thrown it to the... Exactly. So her hard work and her efforts are taking it to the new level. It's the same story. If you give the child... Another friend of mine, he gave his son on his 21st birthday, which is a big thing. It's celebrated in the UK as well. But on his 21st birthday, he gave him R1 million, which is equivalent to 10,000 euros, I think, And then simultaneously, he gave another $1 million to his other son. The one son squandered that money within a few months and came back looking for more. The other son took that money and opened up a restaurant business, which is now one of the most successful business chains in South Africa. So it's up to the individual.
And that can be applied not just for money, but for knowledge, for opportunities, for networking, for so much more.
Exactly. And that's why I credit my mom and I credit my gran, because the two of them were a team. And I thought that there's a lot of things going on in this world. And if I'm given the talent or the ability to showcase them through theatre or film or interview them, and bring to the fore the efforts of what these individuals are doing, then it's my role and my obligation to do so, as, first of all, to say thank you to my mother and to my grandmother for what they've instilled in me and my belief system, to my wife who stands by me, because had it not been for my wife when I had my accident, I don't think I would be where I am today, because there was that whole pity party, everybody coming and saying, shame, and Paul's not going to walk again. When she would come home from work, she would say, get up and walk. And I'm not feeling sorry for you. And when you manifest something, or when you're thinking positively, or when you're thinking,
when you have that cheerleader next to you.
And that's exactly what Maria Callas said. I can and I will, watch me. Those were the lines she lived by. And that's why I decided, okay, well, there's a trilogy of plays, 3 plays that I've written, based on 3 people that have really influenced my life in one way or another from a cultural perspective, because I love culture. And I think culture is what unites us all. And one of them, of course, was Melina Mercouri, who was the first. I mean, she went from a thriving acting career. She nearly won an Oscar, but she lost it to Elizabeth Taylor for Never on a Sunday. But she decided to give up her acting career and fight for what was happening in Greece at the time, and then obviously an advocate for the return of the Parthenon marbles back to Greece. And she was the first female minister of culture in Europe. So for me, that's power all the way. And I needed to bring her life to the 21st century, show people what's going on and what happened. Mm-hmm. And that was the one part of the play. The second part is the life of Mikis Theodorakis, who I'm also infatuated with this man's music, but how he used his music to communicate certain messages. Some may disagree with the messages he was communicating, some may agree, but at the end of the day, it's art. And the third one is obviously Maria Callas. And obviously when people look at Maria Callas, they think, yes, soprano, depressed, the forgotten love of Aristotle Onassis, but she was so much more. That woman, what she did, which is obviously going to be revealed in an upcoming play of mine. So we've decided to go to Callas now, and we're going to be releasing Callas towards the end of this year with one of Cyprus's greatest sopranos.
Wow.
And we've been invited to showcase Callas in New York next year and Chicago. So we're going to be going there next year and then bringing it back to Cyprus. So that's why I like using theatre and culture and art to communicate messages, not just accepting it. The artist paints a picture, but the picture says 1,000 words. It means something for you. It means something for me. Art, culture, what we're doing now is just beautiful. You know, it's exchanging ideas. And again, you know, it's when you sit down comfortably to talk to somebody. I mean, I was interviewing you initially for the resort, and then I didn't realize that there were so many other chapters in your world that needed to also come out. I mean, you've done amazing things with what you're doing, and you're encouraging sustainability, which is something unheard of at the moment. It's still very...
Cyprus, we're quite far behind.
We're very far behind. Yeah.
Unfortunately. That's what I said when we got our lovely award for sustainability, and when I won, I said, but it's a win for everyone.
Of course it is.
And actually, I want people to copy, and I want people to do better than me, and I want people to, you know, expand and study it more.
Well, it's
and
good that
get
you think
better.
that way, Farah, because this is what you want. You want people to copy.
Yeah, and I want people to do better.
Yeah.
And I want someone else to, you know,
and then if they do something better, then you'll take theirs.
And then exactly. And we all just, you know, get that energy off each other. So tell us a little bit about, okay, so you've got Culture Scope, and now you've also started a podcast, which is pulling, I love it that it's these short snippets. Guys, if you have not already tuned in and subscribed to the talk shows with Paul Lambis, the chat shows. You've got to do it. I love it because it's small, it's 6 minutes, you're in a car, you're brushing your teeth, whatever, you can just listen. And it's like the highlights of all these interviews.
Yes.
And it's just perfect. So how did that come about? Why did you decide to do that? And tell us a little bit about your new book and your women documentary. Okay. I really want you to talk about that.
Basically, my interviews from Culture Scope are, first of all, that's the most amazing thing that could have come out of COVID. Because I remember at the time I was chatting to Frida, who is another powerhouse, the CEO of the Cyprus Mail.
Yeah, she's lovely.
And she said to me, could you do something that would help people, you know, entertain people during COVID? So I said to Frida, I've got another idea, but I want to showcase Cyprus because
And the tower was open. The hotel was closed, but the tower was open
and that was
we had residential.
I know, and I reached out to you and you said, okay, why not? So for me, that's why this is such an important place. And when I spoke to Frida about it, I said, I want to do something different, and I also want to showcase things and areas and people of Cyprus that are contributing to Cyprus as a country. It doesn't mean that, not necessarily from an economic point of view, but are contributing to our cultural identity, and not only internally, externally. And she gave me the creative freedom to do whatever I wanted. And I said, I'm going to call it Culture Scope because it's putting focus on culture. And the whole journeys and the whole point of the exercise is also to unearth those hidden gems in Cyprus. Because when you talk to people about Cyprus, they'll say Petra Toromio, Tombs of the Kings, Limassol, the next Dubai,
Colossi.
the usual little statements that you get from the uneducated. That's the way I see it. So you need to educate people that we have hidden caves, hidden churches, what they stand for. We've got cultural movements that are happening in Cyprus that people are unaware of. We've got people that they look at you at face value and they think, oh, Farah, St. Raphael Resort and Marina. But beyond Farah, there's your sustainability, your books, veganism, your recipes, your club. That's why there's a lot of things that people are doing that are contributing to our cultural,
makeup. Yeah,
and people don't know. So I thought initially I'm going to start showcasing all those things, and then it became one interview after the other, highlighting the film industry of Cyprus, from sopranos to people that are across the pond or in America that are basically sitting there every day living and breathing Cyprus, and we don't know anything about them. Because I do agree that the government of Cyprus is doing a phenomenal job as best as they know how. And I'm not going to get into politics, but I still feel that we're not promoting Cyprus enough abroad, and we're not doing the right thing about promoting Cyprus. Cyprus is more than just what you see in the top 10 TripAdvisor. It's beyond that. So you need to basically say to people, when you come to Cyprus, not only do you get to see A, B, C, and D, but you can also meet this guy who's producing this, that guy that's producing that. A lot of people don't know that Leonardo da Vinci was inspired about the lace in Lefkada, and that part of the Last Supper, the painting, the actual tablecloth that's in that painting is based on the lace designs of our beautiful little grannies in Lefkada. So a lot of people are not aware of things like that. They're not aware of the missionary routes of the Apostle Paul and Barnabas, and all the way through to Salamiu, where you've got these sacred olive trees that are standing thousands of years old. And there's beautiful routes that people can follow and picnic on these sites. So there's a lot of hidden treasures, and I wanted to unearth all of those.
It's so important. I know definitely Cyprus Dios would be so happy to hear that. He's been on this podcast as well, our Deputy Minister of Tourism.
I saw that.
And he was talking about these things, about the village life, about the true essence and experience of Cyprus, and that we must all bring that back to the forefront.
Of course.
So,
that's the most important thing.
And the nature trails, I mean, amazing.
Oh, wow.
And that's all been done under this ministry. So it's great.
I think especially the agro-tourism part is amazing. And I remember when we used to come on holiday in the 80s, and how I yearn for that old Cyprus. And, I've basically taken the list of the colorful villages of Cyprus, and we've decided with my wife that we're going to go out whenever we've got a free chance, and we're going to visit these villages. And I went to, I think it was Arsos, which is near Omodos, that side. And I remember stopping just on the side street, those little narrow streets.
Yeah.
And for some reason, two cars can actually get past.
I don't even know how it happens.
I don't know how that happens.
Yeah.
And then this old granny opens her door, and I shouldn't say old granny, this granny opened her door, and she goes, "Do you want guluria? I just made them." And that smell that was coming out. Now, obviously, I'm avoiding gluten at the moment, and my wife said that they were the most remarkable guluria out. But
imagine how sweet, like how genuine
that we have. That we, I think we're getting a little bit sidetracked in the main cities, although the cities have a very important part to play.
Cyprus Dios said this. He said, we must all remember we're only one generation away from village life. And we must all remember that.
And Cyprus is amazing. I love Cyprus. I love Cyprus. So that all my interviews, a lot of people were saying to me, well, could you do like a summary of some of the best interviews? And of course, all my interviews are great because I love every single person I've met.
Yeah, and you definitely can't come out and say, well, that one was awful. Or
okay, I've got a lot of behind the scenes shots.
Behind the scenes, I'm sure. But
which are edited out.
So tell us, who were your favourite then? You can definitely say some of your favourite.
I can't tell you who my favourite is, but I can tell you a few that do stand out.
So the ones that stand out, or the ones that people receive the best?
Okay, I think at the most, the one that's trending at the moment was my interview with Eugenio Mastrandrea, who's the lead actor in the series From Scratch on Netflix. Okay. the reason why I connected him, you might say, what does he have to do with Cyprus? Well, first of all, what encouraged me to reach out to him was that, number one, it was trending number one on Netflix in Cyprus. But his performance was so close to home. And, because I had a friend that I lost to cancer, and I just wanted to reach out to him and ask him what it was like. And then we discovered through the actual, after 25 emails that were sent back and forth, and I finally got the interview with Eugenio, that he studied ancient Greek, he's obsessed with Cyprus and Greece, and that he will be coming out soon. So obviously, I think for me, that was one of the interviews that stood out. And of course, Hauser, who we planning in the future to bring to Cyprus, he was just so eager to embrace the Cypriot culture. And when I finally got the interview with Hauser, he said to me, I'd love to bring in a little bit of the Cypriot lira and the violin into my music, and then maybe we could just do this whole masterpiece. But like I said, like the ones that stand out the most, those are the ones that are trending. But there are a few interviews, and I think I'd have to say the one with Leah Hadjiadamo, who was Evagoras Palikaridis' girlfriend, and her story, which you can check it out on my YouTube and on the podcast. Unbelievable story, how she had to say goodbye to one of Cyprus's fallen heroes. And I think that was one interview where I actually took it one step further and traced the path that he took as well. And I went up to the imprisoned graves in Nicosia and went through down to the gallows and had a look, because I felt that in order for me to convey the story correctly and to put Leah's documentary out there, I needed to also know what Evagora went through from his side. And I know a lot of people say, well, he was this and he was that and it was Oyoka and that. I don't look at that. I look at the story, this tragic love story. And there's a woman now who's sitting in her late 80s and she's reflecting on Evagoras Palikaridis, one of Cyprus's national heroes. And then she opens out his correspondence, his letters, and his book where he wrote poems. And I was actually physically holding the books and the letters that Evagora Palikaridi wrote. I think that's one of the moments that stands out for me. But having said that, and I know I'm talking a lot, there's a lot of other interviews that I have interviewed people, and I just felt that they didn't contribute to anything, and I haven't aired them. So there are some people out there that you can understand where they're coming from. And I want to put out the interviews. I've interviewed about 180 people so far. And I want to put out the interviews that will also encourage action. Mm-hmm. That someone will take something and inspire them to move forward.
And that the listeners, it was worth their time and they'll gain from it. It was worth, I have the same, because I do get quite a lot of people now that ask to come on this podcast. And I say no. Even if they're known people or they're achieved X, Y, or Z, if I feel that the story behind it, or if they're not willing to be authentic, because a lot of people, it's just to kind of advertise what they've done and the ego is going to come in, and it's not really something that's going to add value. I'd rather have FT here, let's say our housekeeper, who's got an amazing story, and she was a single mom to 3 children, and she works 3 jobs, and she did so much. And I think anybody who listens to that podcast, that you'll never leave a hotel room the same again. You'll never view a housemaid the same again.
That's what I'm saying, Farah, is that these are the stories that also need to be brought to light. At the end of the day, I also see it that if somebody I'm interviewing starts with I know exactly where it's headed. Yeah. And I can say that 10% of those interviews that are the ones that I haven't aired start with I. But then when they start with, well, what do you want to know? You know, that humility, even with famous artists. I mean, Hauser was speaking to me and he says to me, you better not say this on air, but I told him I will. He was speaking to me with casual shorts on and, and a nice top. And he was talking casually from his farmhouse in Croatia. And, at the end of the day, that's why I insist on, I want it to be a casual, at face value conversation.
Real, authentic and real. So tell us a little bit, because you've got a new book out and I really want you to tell us about
74.
74.
Okay.
My goodness.
That's the big one.
That's the big one.
I've been working on 74 since 2013, actually 2012. Basically, the idea originated when my son came home and I had seen him lining up all these little army figures on the floor, and he was flicking the one side to the other. And I won't tell you who the one side was and who the other side was. And that upset me, because the thing is, I don't like to encourage anger and war, even though it's
an animosity,
it's very much a part of our daily lives, and we're hearing left, right, and center what's going on. But I was filming in Scarino at the time for Sigma, and we were doing a pilot episode, which I had written a series called Ikoyenyakavari, which is based on a overweight family man. And it's not only the weight of the person physically, it's the physical burden that he has from the whole family, because the son's homosexual and he's trying to break out that he is, and he hasn't come out yet, and the daughter's an emo and she's trying to just fit in, and everybody's trying to find their path in this family.
I love it. Did it air?
No, it didn't air, but the idea, once we were filming and we actually did the pilot episode there, something happened. I think it was July, and then we were talking about the 74 invasion. And I spoke to all the other actors there, Cypriot actors, and I said to them, is there anything about 74 that's been done in English? And apart from one or two documentaries that are out there and by very famous
maybe BBC
or BBC, I said, I'm looking at a full-length feature or a theatrical production. And at the time, I was more focused on the theatre side, because I thought I'm going to do a piece on 74, but I just need to find out the angle and showcase it. So initially at the time, the idea of focusing on the woman of Cyprus didn't even come across. It didn't even enter my mind. So what I did is I reached out to a lot of refugees, a lot of the mayors of the occupied towns that are based in Nicosia. And they were very, receptive. And they said, come along, Paul, here, we'll give you a list of the names and people that you can contact that are willing to speak. And I went around interviewing a lot of people, and I was hearing the same story. The men went out, they fought, they were heroes. We've lost this, we've lost that. Sad stories, but the same story. And I thought, well, I came home and I looked at all my notes and I said, out of all these interviews, and there must have been about 60 or 70 of them, the story is the same. So where's the angle? It's just basically, it's going to also be perceived that someone's just crying about their fate. So I went and I interviewed this couple in Nicosia, and I realized from the body language of the wife that she had her own story to tell, because you could see when a couple sit, they either sit towards one another. Her body language was left, he was right. So I thought there's something there. She wants to communicate something. So as I left, I gave her my card and I said, well, if it's possible and you do remember a story that you'd like to share, please give me a call, and please.
And she obviously couldn't say this all in front of his,
of her husband. Yeah. So she says to me, I don't have anything to say. Very, defensive. Whatever my husband said, he said it. I don't have anything to say. I said, well, look, whatever you tell me, I will never mention your name, but I will mention your story. So think about it. And not only if you've got a story to share that will also act as a voice for a lot of other women that have experienced stories similar to yours, please let's get the word out. So I was putting on my journalist hat.
Someone's story is someone else's survival guide.
Exactly. So she phoned me about a week later, completely different tone of voice. I didn't even recognize her, to be honest. And she said to me, I'd like to meet with you again, but please don't come to my house. I'd like you to come to another house in Nicosia. So I said, I'm there. I'm straight away. Yeah. And we arranged it a few days later. When I arrived, Farah, I'm getting goosebumps just telling you. The door opened. There were about 40-odd women sitting in that house, just women. So I walked in and I thought, she's done my homework for me. I'm going to get a story out of this one. And she started telling me her story. Another woman started telling me her story. And it was stories of rape, abortions, missing children, lost loved ones, but stories that were raw, how the one was even pulled out of a house, she was clutching onto the door of her home, and they were pulling her by the hair. And even the last woman in Varosi that was sitting there, and she just woke up that morning and she was just collecting oranges or lemons off a tree. And suddenly a UN truck came and said, jump on, say goodbye to your home. And another woman that was active, because remember, the women of Varosi were also collecting, the Lyceum of Women were collecting clothes and, for the women that had been affected, the families that had been affected in Gerinia. And the thing is, why it struck a chord was that I'm not painting a picture that I'm a refugee, but I kind of left South Africa.
Because you had to.
Because I had to, not because I wanted to, but I could sell my home, pack my belongings and bring whatever I wanted to bring. I've closed a chapter, even though there's still family there. I feel my chapter has closed there. These people woke up one morning, were having breakfast, and then suddenly that was it. So what I got out of those stories, there were women from Gerinia, women from Morpho, women from Amochosto, women from, there were even Turkish Cypriots there, which I liked.
So, I remember you telling me, so these women, the Greek Cypriots, had kept in touch with Turkish Cypriots. Still
friends.
And then they'd ask them to come to this meeting
gathering.
Where you thought you were just going to this random woman's house, let's say,
Correct.
to meet a woman that you'd met, one woman,
just
and maybe
one
you
woman.
thought the other one would be there. And then there were 40 women from both sides.
There were more than 40 women.
Wanting to share their story. And probably so desperate to find someone who will listen to them, because the husbands, again, we go back to ego. Well, we did this. It was all about us. And your role is just to be quiet.
That's why I think it's very important to wake up in the morning and don't accept things at face value. Ask people how they are. Because there is a story. Everybody's got a story to tell.
And it's something maybe journalism taught you even more of, how to listen, how to search.
I think, first of all, the first story that started was how a woman had to, which if we've got time, I can quickly share it.
Yeah, please do.
She was basically getting married on that day in Gerinia. And she woke up that morning, and because at that time, her Turkish Cypriot friend, they were told that they had to live apart. They were living in separate areas. She met her best friend in the fields on the morning of her wedding. And it was early morning. I think it wasn't even sunrise yet. And her mother had sewn her wedding dress. Her father had passed away. And her mother sewed the wedding dress. And she also sewed a dress for her best friend as a bridesmaid. But her best friend couldn't be at the wedding. So they met, and she came to wish her friend, and she said good luck and everything. And they had a very warm relationship. And she gave her the dress, and she said, I want you, even though you can't wear it tonight at my wedding, I want you to have it because in my heart you really are one of my bridesmaids. And when they were embracing each other in the fields, she said that they looked up and they looked all these balloons in the sky. And she says, the girl that was going to get married said, look how nice, God sent balloons to decorate the sky. And of course, those were the paratroopers. And when they were telling me the story, it was such an emotional story that I looked at it and I could actually picture it on screen.
Well, you're telling me and I can picture it.
But her story
so
doesn't
emotional.
end there. The girls parted ways because obviously there was this burst of gunfire. And she ran back to the house, and of course her mother was gone, was missing. And that's when she came face to face with a Turkish trooper, and he raped her, unfortunately. And her story takes on a few other levels throughout the production. So basically what happened is, when I looked at all these stories...
Sorry, this is a true story.
True story. All the stories are true. But when I was listening to all these stories, and similarly to the men, I found that the woman from Gerinia had a similar story. The woman from Varosi had another one. And I decided at that point I was going to separate and create 4 characters to the production and name them after the towns that are under occupation. Because even the Turkish Cypriots, even though they're living in the north, they still feel occupied. So I liked that angle.
So from all of these, so you interviewed more than 40 ladies at that time and probably more since. And then from that, you took all their stories and you've written this play.
Yes, I merged them into 4 characters. And each character, the protagonists, represent the town under occupation. So it was originally written as a theatrical production, which we staged in Cyprus in 2013. The response, because I was hearing, oh, but it's in English and, I'm not going to come watch it. Curiosity killed the cat. Everybody came to watch it. And they all felt the same way when they left the production. They couldn't breathe from the stories that they heard. And it was a proper full-scale production with actors from Cyprus. There was even one scene similar to a movie where you show a transition of events that play out in a movie. And I used a beautiful choreographed piece of dancers to actually showcase various events in history. And when the production finished, they all came up to me and they said, I can't breathe from what you've just shown us. And of course, it was very well received. And what changed for me was when a Turkish Cypriot journalist came to watch it in Nicosia. And she said to me, I wish you could take this production to the North because it's so unbiased. It shows both sides of the story. Obviously, we touch on a few events that led to the division because people need to understand why the Turkish Cypriots and the Greek Cypriots are no longer, And basically, it was just so brutal. But I didn't want to hide behind that brutality. And I didn't want to turn around and say that everything is just honey and milk. It's not. Because as a South African, I know what it's like being divided. I know what it's like being told that I'm not allowed to sit with one of my very good friends at a restaurant because of the color of his skin. And these are relationships that were built over many years. And these are the people that were breaking bread together. Now they're told that they can't. And
that the other one's the enemy and the other one's bad and we should fight them. And
so I said to the journalist, I'd love to bring it to the North, but I think they're going to kill me if I have to stage this production there. So she says, well, then make it a film. And that's when it dawned on me. And I said, maybe I should rewrite the script, take a bit of the feedback that I got, because obviously one or two of them, the people that had seen the production that are very close to me, that are from the West End, they said to me, remove any reference to politics. And just make it about the human suffering and the consequences of war on women and children and men, but primarily the women and children of Cyprus. So I decided to do just that. So it's not a movie about who fired the first shot. It's about the consequences on both sides of the fence and what war does to people.
And who really suffers.
Exactly.
Who really suffers.
So I wrote the script. It was there. And then I thought, what do I do with it? So as many of the scripts that I've written, I've submitted it to the Screenwriters Guild of Greece. I registered it at the Vault in the UK, the Great Britain Writers Guild, and of course in the Screenwriters Society in Hollywood. So basically what you do is you register the script so that you can get a registration number so that nobody can copy your idea, because we do live in a society where people like to mirror another one's.
Absolutely.
So I left it at that, Farah. And then a few months later, I was working actually on Melina after that. I get a call from one of the studios in Hollywood that had actually seen this and read the script. And I was fortunate because when you lodge a script into the vaults, that they call them, they get filed alphabetically. And mine's 74. So as a number, it shifts right up to the top. So it was one of the scripts that they read. And at that time, the company was filming Fast and Furious in Indonesia. And they asked me to fly to Indonesia to meet up with the production team so we could discuss the possibility of filming 74. And I said to them, well, if you really are serious, because, I didn't think that, I thought it was maybe a friend of mine playing a joke on me. So I said to them, well, if you're serious about the film, come to Cyprus, because you're going to be able to see what I'm talking about, a flag on a mountain, the propaganda there, the divided capital, the last divided capital, and what it's like for people throwing flowers over the fence to say hello to their friends. And you need to come and see that face to face, experience it. And 20 minutes later, you can be sitting at a 5-star restaurant and experience that as well. And they liked the idea and they came, which I didn't expect. And obviously we toured them around. We showed them the good and the bad. We went past a lot of the cemeteries, the abandoned cemeteries. They went into the north. I went as far as Famagusta, the ghost town, and I had a bit of an experience there, which I don't want to share the experience here. But at the end of the day, they basically, we then came to Limassol, and we were sitting here by the sea having a fish lunch, and they turned around and they said to me, I can't believe we are living, you are living in such a beautiful country, and we're having this amazing fish meze lunch, and just about an hour away,
there's all of that.
There's that. So they said, we're in, count us in. And of course, it takes a long time to get a film ready and to work on the development and scenes and, production teams. And then obviously the filming incentive came into Cyprus, which I thought would only contribute to the movie. And we got to the point where budgets and everything were in place, and then COVID hits. And obviously investors pulled out because companies wouldn't insure filming. There was no guarantee that we could go and film, and then if something happened, then they would shut down filming, and investors lose money, because I'm looking at, yes, from an emotional perspective, but others are looking at from the financial.
Absolutely.
But we got to the point now where we've got the right team back in place. We are on the tip now of, going into filming. And part of the agreement was to do a documentary first that will then complement the film that's going to follow after. So we're starting to film a documentary at the moment based on the 74 invasion, but again, on the woman of Cyprus.
From their perspective.
Yeah.
I can't wait. I'm so touched, actually. I have to fight back tears. Also being from Lebanon and a war-torn country, it's just horrific what people go through. And I think it is so important that we all remember that. And we don't want to relive people's pain. And it's quite difficult, I think, for so many people who are empathic, because many people can take that on themselves so much that they end up destroying their own lives. And that's not the purpose of that. But just like history and learning about the Second World War, or any other atrocity that's happened in our history, we must learn about it. We must make sure it doesn't happen again, and we must move forward. And I thank you for all your.
Yeah. I mean, there's one little story which I can just briefly touch on. I also had the opportunity to visit the Jewish museum the Holocaust Museum in Cyprus,
and in Larnaca, isn't it?
In Larnaca, and I interviewed Chief Rabbi, and after I had the interview with him, obviously a few of his colleagues over there showed me around, and the one guy says to me, "Do you want to see a cap from Auschwitz?" And I said, "What do you mean, a physical item of clothing from Auschwitz?" And hold it in my hands. And he goes, "Yes, because we have one." And he pulled it out, he brought it out, and he actually allowed me to touch this.
A cap. Like a Jewish cap.
What they were wearing in the concentration camps.
Oh, the black and white, yeah.
The blue and white stripes.
Yeah.
And it was obviously very dirty. There were a few bloodstains on it. But when I was holding this cap in my hands, the connection that you feel, emotional connection, in that moment, you forget about whether you're Greek Cypriot, whether they are Jewish, whether you are German, or whatever the case may be. And you realize that it's that little cap, that item of clothing that was worn by a prisoner who had, again, his own story to tell. And we're sitting in 2022 when I interviewed him, and I'm holding this cap. And all those stories and emotions come flooding in. Who doesn't have that? I think we all have that ability to forgive and love. Don't forget, learn from the past. But it's similar to what you're seeing on TikTok at the moment. There's a lot of people going out that are saying, "Oh, I'm so glad things have happened like that in Turkey."
I know, it's horrific. It's just not human. It's
and
shocking.
You're seeing children that are being pulled out of the rubble, and you're saying, tomorrow that could be you.
Fathers holding the hands of them.
Come on.
I think we're all born kind. I think we're all born vegan as well. And I think we're all born innately kind and good. And I think it's society and bitter people, jaded people with their own stories. There are reasons why they've turned out like that, but they then impart those negative feelings, vibes, whatever you want to call it, on the next generation. And I think, unfortunately, many people then grow up also in their own time and in their own turn, bitter and angry and confused. And I think it's a learned trait, and I think it's so sad. And I think it's amazing, going back to what you said at the beginning of the interview, how people, and hopefully COVID did give that to a lot of people, that internal reflection time, that downtime, that time at home. Because a lot of people run away from their homes, literally meaning every day. They go to work, they go out, they drink, they laugh, they socialize, they're whatever. And they're just running away from really who they are. And I think that internal reflection is so important, and to connect back to the child within, who is that kind soul, who wouldn't hurt another person, who doesn't want to call a guy fat in a queue.
Exactly.
Or, you know, and possibly when they do reflect, they don't want their children to grow up in that world. So, but it does take a lot of courage to look at yourself in the mirror, metaphorically and really.
It's one of the hardest things you can do, Farah. But the thing is, you know what? When you look at yourself in the mirror, make the decision on your own to love what you see. Don't make that decision based on what society is telling you. And
make yourself better.
Exactly. Yeah. That's why I wrote the book Odd One Out, because I felt that you need to go up again. And in that book, there's just various scenarios. It's a whacked out book. It's just crazy. Some people might feel that there's no structure in it, but the people, all these stories are intertwined, but they're people that are, you know, the one that understands, like, you know, for example, my mother, bless her, but you have a child that's has a tendency to be obese. Cook healthy for the child. Yeah. Don't encourage.
Let them eat as much as they want, but don't give them 5 hamburgers.
Or just say that, fine, on the Sunday you can have a treat when we all go out or whatever the case is. But try and instill a healthy way of life. Or you see someone. But
they're just doing their best. And that's the thing. And evolutionarily, that's the right word. Yeah. In evolution, that's the main point. She's doing a better job than her mother did before her.
But you need to assess the situation. It's like you're not going to put diesel in a car that functions on petrol, or you're not going to put petrol in a car that functions on electricity. Yes, and there's no
one size fits all.
Exactly.
You've got to, and you see that when you have several children or different parts of your team, employees, whatever it is, you've got to adapt, and adaptability is key. Yeah.
And then we move forward.
I'll well, it won't be the last part of but towards the end of this podcast, my now 9-year-old child, but she was probably about 6 or 7 when she said this, Yasmina, who you know, my husband and I were in the car, and we drove past a house that's quite ostentatious, and we made a comment about it looking quite palatial, and we laughed. And no one else was in the car. It was just us. You know, we weren't being mean, or we didn't perceive ourselves as being mean at that moment. And our young child was sitting at the back, and she said, Mummy, Daddy, don't laugh at that house. You shouldn't laugh at that house. And I said, you're absolutely right, Yasmina Moore. We would never tease someone, and we would never be mean to someone about that. It's just, we're just now in a car, and it's only Mummy and Daddy. And she said, you know, it doesn't matter. That house is someone else's dream. It might not be your dream.
It's true.
But that's someone else's dream. And you should never laugh at somebody else's dream. And she was only 6 or 7. And I still remember that until now. It makes me emotional. And I just said, you know what? You learn from your children. I said, Yasmina, you're right. And, you know, and she was, you know, it goes deeper than that. Don't put that out there. Even if you just think it, don't. You know, retrain your mind.
Farah. I mean, we left South Africa. We had a very nice home. We were very comfortable, and we came to Cyprus. But then, obviously, with the rand and the euro and the pound in those days exchange, you couldn't get what you could get for your rands in South Africa. But we opted to invest in our lifestyle, and even if it meant a smaller home. Yeah. And, you know, and a lot of our friends used to come from South Africa and go, oh, my goodness, you live in such a small home. Yes, I know, but my back garden is the sea. What more do I want?
Exactly.
In 5 minutes, I'm at the beach. I'm having a nice time. I'm enjoying. And to come back to the point, I think in my case, my family was born with a souvlaki or a chef d'Italia in their mouth. Not vegan, because I don't think this family is vegan at all, even though we try and encourage a healthier way of life. Yeah. And I've shared some of your recipes to my mom, and I said this and this. She says, well, I'm going to eat that. Your father won't, because he wants his meat. Yeah.
But then you have that. And then you have just a smaller portion of meat. And then slowly people start feeling healthier and happier. And
well, I told you, I'm following your plan.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I can't look at meat now.
Yeah, in the same way. Once it clicks.
I might have fish. I might have a little bit of chicken because I did, shy away at one point and then I came back.
Yeah.
But I'm not as obsessed as I was.
Yeah.
And it's more on making healthy choices. I've eliminated dairy. I drink oat milk or almond or, I'm trying and to find the healthier options.
Yeah. And it's a journey. It's not overnight. It is a journey, and enjoy it.
And the thing is, you wake up with a positive mindset.
Yes.
I know not every day is the hills are a sound live with the sound of music. We all have our challenges. And there
Absolutely.
are days we get out of bed and we think, I wish I could stay. But the thing is, I actually saw this picture the one time, and it was a photograph of a cemetery. And there's a sign outside the cemetery that says, we all had our jobs to go to that day. So the one thing, and this is the one thing I also learned with...
so sad,
I can just tell you quickly, Aristotle Onassis was one of the wealthiest and most ruthless and corrupt men in the world. We know that. But when his son, Alexandros, who was killed in an accident, an airplane accident, it was his birthday, asked for his father to give him Olympic Airways and make him the head of Olympic. He says, I've got the biggest and the most expensive gift I'm going to give you on your birthday. And his birthday came, and he gave him a little black book. And Alexandros opened it and he looked through it. There was nothing in there. And he says, but this is like, 10 cents from the shop or something. And he says, it's the most expensive, valuable life lesson I'm going to give you now is whoever you meet in life, write down their name and write down how much time they are worth. Because at the end of the day, whether you're rich or poor, we all have the same amount of time. So when you meet people, now, obviously, he was looking at it more from a financial point of view. In other words, if Farah's of no benefit to me, I won't talk to you again. I'll just say hello. But I look at it differently. I look at it, well, if I'm going to spend 5 minutes with Farah and she's going to bring out the worst in me, and I'm going to sit with A, B, or C, and they're going to bring out the best in me, that's how I put a value on people and relationships. Because we've all had that experience. Everybody's going to encounter someone that is there for their own benefit.
Or just an emotional vampire. They might not even be financial, but they might just suck all that energy out of you.
And that's why, in a day I can be working, because I think that the cell phone is one of the nicest, but the worst. It can become your worst enemy.
Yeah.
And when the phone rings and I see who's calling, I know whether I should answer or not, because I know where it's going to take me.
Yeah.
So when Farah phones, you're in my list of top
speed
people
dial.
to speed dial, because I'm always phoning you.
I need to come and interview someone.
But that's what I'm saying, is that in life you need to constantly reassess, and you've got to wake up in the morning and say, I'm okay, I'm all right. Because if you first of all, if you find fault with yourself, everything else will be.
And you have to start with being kind to yourself and being forgiving to yourself. Yeah. Paul, I love that. Right, last bonus question. Please pick out any question.
I'll pick up that
one.
Okay.
So this is from our team. I don't know who has asked this, but let's see. Well, that's an easy one for you. What is your favorite color and why?
Silver.
Silver?
Absolutely.
Oh, I wouldn't have thought that. Why?
Because my company's called Silver Thespian.
But okay, so why did you call it
I'll
Silver
tell you
Thespian?
why silver. I don't like, I think gold is nice, but it's
I love gold.
Gold is
girl.
stunning, okay? It's a wonderful mineral, and we had an excess of gold in South Africa. But I find that silver is the in-between, and I want to be in the middle. I don't want to be...
no extreme.
Yeah. I want to be friends with copper and bronze and gold. So put me in the middle. I'm silver. I just love the color. It just brings out...
Makes you happy.
Makes me happy. Silver.
I love that. What a nice note to end on. Paul, thank you so much. We wish you all the best, and I cannot wait for 74 to come out.
I can't wait either. There's a lot of exciting things that are planned. We've signed up already with an A-list actress, which I can't say, but...
all right, we'll find out. Everybody follow Paul on all social media.
It's an exciting journey. We've got a lot of people involved, a lot of people that we've interviewed in the past that are going to hopefully jump back on the project if their schedules permit. But I just feel that we're living in an exciting time. It's very, very risky at the moment if you fall into the wrong trap. But I think that goes in every era that we live through. We just need to embrace the positivity and be kind to one another. Kindness is key.
That's our motto at St. Raphael, radiate kindness.
That's it.
It's our hashtag.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul.
And it shows. You know. Thank you so much for inviting me onto your talk show. I think you're doing an amazing job. And just keep going, Farah, because you are an inspiration to a lot of people. And I thank you for being so nice to me the whole time.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Paul. Thanks.